reliever. So we're making great progress, but still a ways away from game activity for Rob.
See, you mentioned the other day you might go out to Florida and throw a little bit at the facility.
Yeah, and that's the beautiful part about having the facility is we can get them down there and just simplify it when we're ready to take that next step in baseball activity. We can get them out and get them going, and once Gulf Coast League starts, it's not as easy to drop them into extended spring training games, to fall rehab and things like that. But yeah, we might send Rob back to Florida and let him get built up down there as he's ready to start facing some hitters. It's easier to put together a sim game in Florida than it is in a big league ballpark, and that is certainly an option for us.
You mentioned the other day that it's kind of an extreme seller's market in the trade front right now. Obviously, you guys have made a move since then. Do you feel like it's shifting as it gets a little bit closer to the deadline at this point?
Well, I think as we've talked, as you get closer to the deadline, there are more teams that tend to realize that maybe the math is working against them. There are some teams that are realizing that the math isn't working in their favor, but not against them, and there's some teams that realize the math is working in their favor. And we're experiencing that. Again, we'd still like to add to this club. We've shored up what we felt was our biggest soft spot, but that doesn't mean we're done, and we'll continue to look. It just gives us some versatility and flexibility to find where we think the next best match and next best fit is.
Is there any area in particular that you feel?
Not at this point. I mean, we're exploring basically everything and trying to find out what the acquisition costs are, what the in our minds what our impact would be internally, both on the field from a production standpoint, but also trying to be sensitive to the clubhouse and what move X or Y would do to our expected production versus the intangible as well.
How many open 40-man spots do you have right now?
We have the one. When we designated Lombardozzi for Aramis, we had to put Aramis on the 40, and then once he reported, we designated Brent. That dropped us to 39.
Sellers still on the 40-man spot?
Sellers is not. We were able to secure outright waivers with him and outright him without ever having to put him technically back on, because it was one singular move. We reinstated him and outrighted him all in one move.
Oh, okay.
Neal, what's the biggest challenge? And you've been so good at maintaining competitiveness from year to year. What's the biggest challenge, like when weighing a potential move, long-term 2016-17 versus making any potential run now?
Yeah, it's trying to measure the impact of, say, a free agent to be and what he can do for you for 2 months of the regular season and 1 month of the postseason versus when you trade a young player in Jonathan Barrios. What is Aramis Ramirez's impact going to be over the next hopefully 3 months versus what Jonathan Barrios could do for the next 6+ years once he becomes a major league player, and organizational depth, industry depth, organizational need. All of those things factor in, and we felt that that was the right move for us. 5 years from now, Jonathan Barrios may be pitching in a very meaningful role for Milwaukee. Aramis Ramirez will be in year 4 or 5 of retirement, and some of you may be questioning the move that we made at that time. But the big thing for us is that balance of short-term need, short-term impact with our goal of remaining competitive as many years as we can in the future.
Have you noticed that the asks, last year we saw that young major league talent was what teams wanted in exchange for some of the bigger names. Has that played over into this season, or is it back to maybe more prospect-oriented packages? Or is it just a case-by-case basis?
Case by case, there's still the clubs that are looking for near ready or current major league talent in return for their players, and there are other clubs that are looking more just best available prospect, and they'll take a shot at the ceiling versus taking a lesser ceiling prospect that's closer to the big leagues or maybe currently in some kind of role in the big leagues. So, but it's more case by case. I don't know that we're going to see the same major league for major league talent that we saw late, but I didn't anticipate it a year ago, and we recognized that it was heading in that direction. But there were still a number of prospects for big league deals on the table that didn't come to fruition, and it'll be interesting to see what plays out this year as well.
From your experience this time of year, does activity go in bursts, and can that affect your activity on a team standpoint, making calls and fielding calls, that type of thing?
From our standpoint, we have a strong feel for what we want, what we're willing to do, and when that matches what the other club wants, then a deal comes together, whether that's 10 days in front of the deadline or 10 minutes in front of the deadline. That really doesn't shift for us. In other clubs' cases, typically there's a few moves early, and then there's a flurry the 24 hours leading up to the deadline, I would anticipate the same this year, but we continue to make the calls we're supposed to make and continue to try to have as much of a feel for the market as we can. And if something needs to get pushed, something needs to get pushed. Or if a club's not willing to be pushed, they're not willing to be pushed. And there's only so much you can do on one side of the equation.
One guy that's worked out in the trade is Stephen Brawl. Why do you think he's performed so well since coming over? What has led to his success?
I mean, our scouts love the athleticism of a two-sport athlete or a two-sport player. I mean, a two-way player in college. So there was some athleticism there. They liked the feel. They liked the upside, given that he wasn't a pitcher only from the age of 10 on. And they thought that there was more there. And you know, Steven's done a nice job. Our pitching coach has done a nice job getting to know him. And he can pound the zone. He's got pitches for strikes. He's got pitches for weapons, and he's continued to develop.
Has Tyler Glasnow kind of taken his game maybe a pretty big step in terms of development in Altoona in the last month?
Yeah, the last two starts are indicative that he's as healthy as he's going to be. Guys are never 100%, and that's such a misnomer that guys need to get back to 100%. They're never 100%. Once the season starts, really, once they have their second day of spring training, they're no longer 100%. There's always something that's achy or it just doesn't feel quite right, and Tyler's back confident and comfortable, and you see that in the quality of his fastball. We see it in his last two outings in particular.
AJ essentially acknowledged some regression is due for him for the second half of this year. Internally, with your guys' numbers, how much do you expect him to progress from that great first half?
I mean, AJ, it wasn't like AJ was throwing 97 and just blowing people away. AJ was commanding his pitches. He was mixing his pitches very well. He was down in the zone. He had a remarkable first half. But we expect that AJ is going to continue to go out and be a pitcher that gives us a legitimate chance to win every time he takes the baseball. I think he acknowledged he made some mistakes in the middle of the plate last night. Good hitters tend not to miss pitches in the middle of the plate very often, and they made him pay for them. At the same time, we see the bite to the breaking ball. We see the movement to the fastball. And when it was located well, it was hard to hit. And that's the guy that we're looking for as we continue to move forward. And if we can swing the bats for him, give him some support, give him some leeway, give him some breathing room, that'll help him. But we expect AJ will be a really good pitcher for us again in the second half.
How's Casey Sandler doing?
Casey's scuffling a little bit, still trying to work through the soreness and the discomfort, good days, bad days, and unfortunately probably more bad days than good days right now. We're in the process of getting him the second opinion and try to give him some clarity, give us some clarity as to what is going on in there and why he's continued to have some discomfort. I'll get to Jimmy T as soon as we get some information on the second opinion and get the feedback.
He tweeted or put on Instagram or something a picture of him and Andrews. Was that the second opinion, or was that the first and this is now the second?
That would be the second opinion, and we'll get you some information as soon as we get the information ourselves.
What about Tyon? Do you know where he's at in his rehab?
Jamison is in the rest period right now. You can't do a whole lot for those that have had a hernia surgery, and I had one when I was 6. You can't do a whole lot for a little while. So he's just in the pure rest period, but things are going really well there. One update I do need to give you is Andrew Lambeau has had a setback in his plantar fasciitis. We've had him see a doctor. He's gotten an injection, and the injection leads to about a 3-week shutdown, and then we'll ramp him back up and try to get him back going again. He was progressed into some baseball activity and was progressing well, and came in with similar pain to what he had the first time he shut it down.
Was this PRP?
No, this was not a PRP. It was an anti-inflammatory injection and trying to get the inflammation out of there. And again, the recommendation was a 3-week shutdown, and we'll evaluate him at the end of that 3 weeks and see where he is at that point.
Is this since the rehab assignment? I saw he was signed to the GCL. I think it was 21st.
Yes.
With Glasnow, how long do you, just with seeing the stuff, and obviously he's working well, and then you talk about the change-up developing, how long do you let him go and kind of dominate batters in AA before you look at promoting him to AAA?
That's a great question. Our goal is to refine some things with the mechanics, refine some things with the repeatability of the mechanics to allow the change-up and breaking ball to play better, and we're still working through some things. Once he accomplishes the things we feel he needs to accomplish to get to the next level, we'll move to the next level.
And what was the original plan for Alan Hansen to move around a little bit, and how was that changed with Jordy and Josh going down a bit?
Well, the original plan was to let Allen settle in at second this year and let the bat play. Let him play one position in games, bounce him to short at second for pregame work, which he's done pretty much all year. There was going to become a point in time where we bounce him to third and try to introduce third base to him. We talked long-term about the outfield as well, just trying to give the young man as many options to break onto a major league club as possible. With Jordy and Josh going down, we sped that time frame up a little bit. He's obviously swung the bat and done a real nice job down there offensively. Continue to work at short, introduce third base to him again a little bit earlier than we initially planned on, and we'll see where it goes. We'll see how the work plays out. If we feel he can play there, if he can be major league caliber there, then we'll continue it. If we don't, then we'll shortchange it, let him focus back again on second base and shortstop. But we're getting some good work done, and we'll see how it progresses.
How is Josh coming along? I saw he was out in the field today playing catch and doing some field work.
Yeah, I mean, Josh is the upside of a hand or a thumb injury is you can keep the legs going, and in Josh's case, we can keep the arm going. He just can't catch, and you need somebody to catch for him. So he's like a quarterback is getting ready to go back into a game, but you can keep the legs going. You can keep the opposite arm going. You can keep the tracking going from a pitch tracking standpoint. So it's easier to come back, and Josh is making great progress. If I'm going to bet on the under in terms of return on two guys, I'm going to bet on the under on Jordy Mercer and Josh Harrison. At the same time, there is a realistic time frame out there that we're going to do everything in our power to make sure we put them in a position to be successful and not put them in harm's way by rushing them back. And we're not going to hold them back. We're also not going to push them forward.
He had a glove on. Is he able to, catch lightly but not have to squeeze?
Yeah, my understanding is the glove is more of a protection mechanism, because when he was out there without a glove, it was a little bit uncomfortable for him, and there was some risk of him catching the thumb. So the glove was more of a protection mechanism than anything else, and not indicative that he's light years ahead of schedule.
Right.
Again, he's making great progress, and he's going to do everything he can to get back there as quickly as possible. But we're still a ways away.
How has Gong's success changed the way you guys have scouted or pursued KBO players?
I won't say it really has. I mean, as we said, I think when we signed him, we believed that he was a regular player. We just weren't sure where, and we weren't sure when. And he's come over here and done everything that we could have asked from him on the field, off the field. And if anything, it's kind of solidified our belief about guys who can play over there. The better players over there can probably play over here. But there's still a lot more that goes into it, and God deserves so much credit for the behind the scenes and how hard he worked to become a part of this team, and how hard he's worked to become comfortable in American culture and American baseball. And this young man's done a ton of really good things behind the scenes, as well as what he's done on the field.
You see the Mets call up a player like Conforto straight from AA to the majors. Would you ever consider something like that? Obviously, you hear it, everybody's talking about the good players we have in AA and you have in single A and moving them up. Would you ever consider doing a move like that?
It would be a rarity. We do believe that there's value to every level. And if a player has checked the boxes to make that jump, then we'd certainly be open to it, but I don't think it's something that we would make a habit of, because again, we do think that there are benefits to having some exposure to every level in the system. AA baseball is very different than AAA baseball, and as we've said many times here before, the gap between AAA and the big leagues has never been larger. So there will be things for each of our guys to learn at that next level as they begin to face some veteran guys that maybe aren't quite good enough to be in the big leagues, but have better command than any pitcher they've ever faced before, or they have they have the ability to set a young pitcher up by flinching and then going to sit on a breaking ball and trying to hit that ball a long way. So just the mentality, the intelligence, the aptitude of the AAA player, that there's a reason why those guys tend to go through that level, and some struggle, some blow right through it. At the same time, talent is talent, skill is skill, and we won't rule it out, but it would be a rarity.
Neal, some of the most aggressive sellers figured out the trade market this year were the most aggressive buyers in the offseason, like the Padres and the White Sox. Do you figure that teams are going to be more cautious to be as aggressive with overhauling their roster when they're going for a wild card spot?
That's not really for me to judge, I guess. In our minds, the teams that win the offseason don't tend to win the World Series, and the teams that win the trade deadline don't tend to win the World Series. It's when you have a good, solid club and you're adding adding good players to it to maybe shore up some soft spots, you're in a good spot when you're able to do that as a club. So I don't really have an answer to your question other than, history shows us winning the back pages doesn't always win the World Series.
You're 7, 8, and 9th inning guys have been superb all year. How important is it in today's game to have that kind of bullpen? Is it almost impossible to win without having a bullpen?